Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You can find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. You'll find everything about me on roycallen.com, my sixth podcast, as well as virtual assistants from GoToBA.world and roycallen.com or the QR code. My guest today, he's the founder of gotchoices.org, where innovation promotes freedom. He's the driving force behind mychips.org, a decentralized digital currency network, and vote Torrent.org, an open source voting platform. With a background in engineering, entrepreneurship, and finance, he brings a wealth of experience and a passion for open source solutions to public policy problems. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about technology, freedom, and the future of decentralized systems from Provo in Utah in the US of A. Please welcome Kyle Bateman.
How are you, Roy?
I'm very well. So they're all kind of project stuff close to me because, like the voting, we're seeing it not just in the States, all over the world. Even though I listen to Patrick Bet-David, I see that in Brazil, there's a lot going on there. They've realized same thing. Nothing looks right. You've got three very interesting projects. So let's get to know Kyle a little bit better. What's your kind of career and how your own kind of thought process? Something's wrong. I need to start making changes to this world.
Well, thanks for having me. My background is actually in electrical engineering. That was my formal training when I was in college. I ended up not going into a regular electrical engineering job, but instead started my own business called Action Target a number of years ago, and basically built that business up from the bootstraps, learning pretty much every lesson the hard way because I was too stubborn to take good advice from other people. But that company eventually became a success. And I hoped early on in the business that I would just be able to be an engineer and just design things and make things. But as it turned out, I had to learn some management skills, and I eventually had to learn accounting. I had to learn finance and a bunch of different things that were really stretching me. And so I also ended up having to do a lot of programming for my own business. That was back in the day, actually even before the internet. And I had to program my own software in order to make the company run. And so I ended up getting experience in programming and in finance and in a bunch of broad areas. When it came time to retire from Action Target, I started writing, just writing articles, and eventually put that together into what I call a book. It's an online book. I haven't ever committed it to print, although you can download it. And I published that on the gotchoices.org website. It just kind of expressed my views, what I'd learned, what I thought about things. And that book ended up covering three topics kind of in detail. One was education, one was energy, and one was monetary policy. And how these different pivots, I call them, kind of affect the degree of freedom that people have in the world, and how able we are to kind of choose the things that we want to do. And subsequent to writing that, I ended up delving back into that, writing a second book, which I called the My Chips Papers. I had originally proposed maybe an alternative way of doing money, as opposed to the central banking model we use today. It was more of a distributed model called the chips banking system. And the My Chips paper came out and took that to the next level and said, let's actually design this. Let's make a form of digital currency that could actually work. How would we design it? And I guess I was naively hoping that as soon as I published this, people would latch onto this. This was around the time Bitcoin was coming out, and I kind of hoped people would latch onto it and it would become a thing. But it was fairly obscure and was lost in the rage of blockchain and Bitcoin. And so I ended up programming much of this myself and creating what today is, I would say, is a proof of concept, which includes a mobile app and a server and some free software, open source software that people can download and use. And so that's kind of the background how I developed into this. I studied economics and kind of rounded out my my experience. And so now I'm kind of a weird duck because I have expertise in engineering and also business and also finance and also economics. And so now I spend my time trying to make things available that will make life a little bit better for other people and expand freedom and choice. And My Chips is really one of the highlights of the Got Choices Foundation, and Vote Torrent is an up and coming close second that is soon to be released.
And this, I suppose, with the digital currencies, I mean, I think Tucker Carlson had somebody, I didn't watch the interview, but I heard about the book, so I bought the book. But apparently, Bitcoin has been infiltrated. They don't know when. 2014, 2017. I've mentioned it previously that the white paper was released on Halloween, which kind of gave me that's a bit strange. And no, just today is the 28th of February of the time of this recording. I mean, there's big fluctuations as well. And, people are saying, oh, is it BlackRock that's just pumping it out? And they're transferring, the ETFs and all that, manipulating the market. Whereas a lot of people kind of were hoping you were safe with this and that wasn't such, So what's your thoughts on the current system?
Well, you've just named most of the key problems with Bitcoin. And when I say Bitcoin, we're really talking about a whole family of digital currencies that are based on a public blockchain. And there are a few variants. There's Lightning Network, which takes a very different approach, but it's still tied back to blockchain. There is also stablecoin, which takes a new approach, but again, it's tied back to a public blockchain. And I guess what I would say is that when I first heard about Bitcoin, I heard about it from a friend, and again, I'm a programmer, and he was a programmer, and he explained it to me. He said, "This is the greatest thing. This is going to be worth so much money someday," and he was correct in that assumption. But in the back of my head, there was something nagging me and just saying, "This can't be possible. You're telling me that every transaction in the whole world is going to be packed into a single ledger somewhere?" Uh, and I just felt that there was something wrong with this. And that's, as I said, I started trying to redesign digital currency from scratch. And so in studying the economics, I learned that there were not only technical problems with Bitcoin. This issue of trying to store every transaction on a single ledger is unscalable inherently. But there were also, in addition to the technical problems, there were problems based on monetary theory. And it took me several years of study to try to get to the heart of what the monetary theory problems are. But to answer your question, what we're seeing a system which was intended to be a private currency that was not under the control of big business and big government, that could be used by the people in a peer-to-peer transaction in order to get their purchases done on a regular everyday basis. But what it has become is something that is unusable as a currency for regular day-to-day transactions. And instead, it is an investment mechanism. And worse, it's an investment mechanism that gets dominated by very rich and powerful forces, hedge funds, governments, security agencies, those who can manage and control large amounts of computing power. And it's also very volatile. It's not stable. And so there's just a whole range of problems that have been identified. And I speak a lot to groups of crypto enthusiasts, and pretty much unanimously, everybody's disappointed. They're hopeful, but their hopes have been dashed because Bitcoin has just not accomplished what they had hoped that it would accomplish.
And you kind of touch on, Venmo and PayPal and all that, because all the transactions, like these companies, they're just ripping off people. Like PayPal up to 10%. Every single payment system is basically ripping off the small boy and to the big boys benefit. And, like if we're looking at, say, all of the blockchain, say the ETFs and everything. A lot of people are investing there in pension funds, and they're not losing out, the BlackRocks and all these, but a lot of the people that are putting their money in are. And I think the majority of people would be happy if they could get like a 5%, 5 to 10%, say 5% per annum, that's safe. And I mean, I even know from my pension that I had before, I cashed it in the end, because you could cash it in at 50. And it was like every year they were telling me it's going to go up this much, going to go up that much, no matter what way the market was. It never did, barely tiny bits. Like, so I knew this isn't good for me. And everyone I talked to, like some people, they're trained to believe, put in as much as you can. In Ireland, I'm not sure what it is in different countries, but in Ireland, depended on what age you were, the amount of your salary that you were able to put in, so-called tax-free. But when I take it out, they take 50, there's like 25% tax rate. The rest is at 50% tax. So people don't realize that either. And every single thing that we're doing, my thoughts of how the whole system might be beneficial, better than the way it is. When you've got a lot of these corrupt individuals in governments, they have a printing press. So if we create a new Bitcoin, I can go away and buy it and manipulate the whole market. And that's what they've been doing. So my thought is the only way for this to work is to step away from the fiat system. Is that possible?
I think it is possible, but we have to build a system that's based on sound monetary principles. And I'm not sure where you necessarily want to go today, but I'm prepared to talk about my chips in a theoretical standpoint, from a monetary theory standpoint. I'm also, I mean, I can just show it to you and show you what it looks like. When we use Venmo that you just mentioned, there's Roy over here and there's Kyle over here. And if I want to transfer money to Roy, I have to go hop to Venmo, and then I have to go to Roy. There's a man in the middle, and what your lament that you just expressed is based on is this man in the middle concept. Is there's always something in the middle that we interact with, and that architecture looks like a wagon wheel. All of us are on the outside of the wagon wheel, but these spokes come into some central place, and everything has to come into the middle in order to be dealt with. Well, in my chips, I just have a list of people or companies that I interact with, and it truly is peer-to-peer. It's based on the peer-to-peer network of private credit arrangements, and there is nothing in the middle. It's like Venmo without the Venmo. It's Venmo with just the other people and the other companies on the other end that I deal with. You know, blockchain was a big step forward, because we used to have to interact with a bank, and the bank was the man in the middle. And I like to use the analogy of Uber. We used to have to always go through the taxi company, and there was only one taxi company or maybe two. And if you wanted a taxi, you were going to have to pay a very high price, because you had to call that taxi company, and they had a monopoly, and they could charge what they wanted. Well, Uber came in and decentralized that to a great degree. And now I could get on my phone and I could directly talk to my driver or my ride. And it allowed us to decentralize ride sharing to a great degree. But there still is Uber. And so still, when I want to contact that driver, I still have to go through Uber. And so it's more decentralized, but there still is this core. Well, Bitcoin and public blockchain is very decentralized compared to fiat currency, but still there is a ledger. There's one ledger in the middle, and transactions have to come into the ledger and go back out of the ledger. So it's a step forward, but it does not reach the logical end of where distributed ledger technology needs to take us. Lightning Network is a big step, another big step in that direction, because we can go off ledger and we can make private sub ledgers, but eventually we still have to roll those back on the public ledger somewhere. Well, my chips takes the idea of distributed ledger technology to its logical extension all the way out to infinity. And essentially every two people in the network share what you could think of as a blockchain, a private blockchain between them. And it never resolves to a public blockchain. It is always private. And you end up with something that is actually more private than Bitcoin. It's safer, it's very difficult to lose. You can't lose your money the way you lose it on a public blockchain if you forget your passwords, for example. It's based on these relationships that you have. And so as long as your partner is still around, you haven't lost your money. And it's more scalable because every time a new person comes onto the network, you add storage and you add processing. It's very efficient. There's no mining. There's no proof of stake. There's no proof of work. And so a CPU somewhere in the world does not have to churn all the time just to keep your money safe. You're only churning CPU power when you actually make a transfer. So it's very efficient. It's low energy usage. It's stable. And so it really has a number of features that Bitcoin doesn't have. But the reason it works is because it's built on an entirely different monetary model from the ground up. And so it just works in a totally different way.
And what way then is a person putting their money into the system? How do they create their money? Is it
that's a very common question that everybody has. And I think it's because we don't understand money. So what we're saying is I want to use this alternate money. And the only way I think I can get money into it is by using something else that I secretly in my heart think of as real money. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, is this real money? When you say, how do I get my money into the system? Is this what you're talking about?
well, I know that the way that's the way that actually buys assets, unfortunately, but I know that even the piece of paper, the numbering, say like the British pound and everything, the fact that they use the pound number and the thing at different sizes, it even means on paper when you investigate it that it's actually not money, yet people treat it as money, and then they can exchange it for services or goods, that piece of paper.
Okay. So you'd admit this is just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen this piece of paper before?
Bank is Zimbabwe. There's a lot of zeros in that one. Is it a billion? Is that a
Okay.
100 billion or 100 million?
This is 100 trillion.
Oh, trillion, is it right?
$100 trillion. Okay. So this kind of emphasizes that this is just a piece of paper. And I have several different forms of money here that I love to show around. Now, this one is interesting. This is from 1957, and it looks an awful lot like this one, but it's a little bit different. I don't know if you can see up there, but this is a silver certificate.
Yeah, like I think it was 71 that Nixon kind of removed it from the back gold.
Now, so this is actually based on silver. I'll just show you a couple of other ones. This one is a Hudson Valley Current. Have you heard of this one?
No.
So this is one of the notable attempts to create a private currency. And so this is just a group of people in the United States who have created their own currency. And it's fairly modern. It has a barcode on it and a QR code. And it's fairly beautiful and is totally separate from government. And so this is what I would call a mutual credit system. I'm going to show you another one. This is called the Utah Goldback. Have you heard of this before?
No.
This is a bill, but it's not just paper. It's made out of gold. So this is a form of physical gold. Obviously, we have traditional gold coins. You know, I'm going to ask you, which of these is real money?
A lot of people think the gold is the real money, but
Okay.
has that, because I know about the diamonds, the way the diamonds with the bears, how they manipulated the market, is the gold similar? Because is there a lot more than we think there is? I mean, I know that they're investigating it at the moment. I don't know, has it been announced with Fort Knox and all the gold and
Yeah, I don't think we know the answer to that.
exactly. And I know in the UK as well, there's I think it was a Gordon Brown or something sold off all the gold when it was very low. It seems to be another manipulation in the market.
Well, it definitely is. So what's the difference between this and this? And I guess I'll show you a silver coin. So here's a silver dollar. what's the difference between the silver dollar and the silver certificate?
Well, I suppose I don't know about the silver certificate, but if we look at the other normal money, well, I mean, that should, in theory, you should be able to request physical silver for that money when it's saying that it's a fraction, whatever rate it is at the time. And it shouldn't create inflation as well when it's done properly.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to introduce a concept here for our discussion. I'm going to call this equity money, and I'm going to call this credit money. Now, you understand that this is a note payable. You understand what that means? So we use the term in the US an IOU. This is an IOU issued by the Federal Reserve against this. So the idea is this is going to be held on reserve somewhere, and this can circulate out in the economy. And when I get tired of using this, I can go somewhere and I can get this back again. Now, this is an object. This is a tangible commodity, and this is something I could use. It's silver, so I could make a teacup out of it, or a spoon, or something. It has utilitarian value. It's durable and it's divisible, and it does a lot of the things that make it good money. But this is a little bit more usable because it's easier for me to carry around and use. And so what we do is we create an IOU against the equity money. So I call this equity money. I call this credit money. And these are two totally different forms of money. And this is equity money made to look like credit money, but it's not credit money. And I've got another form of money here, which is what I would call private credit money. And this is just a personal check. We don't see these very much anymore in the world, but I could write out a personal IOU and I could send it to you. And this literally creates money. Now, it does have a man in the middle, as we talked about. It has to go through a bank and bounce out somewhere else, but it is possible for me to create credit money. So let's talk about why Bitcoin kind of got off on the wrong foot. When they designed Bitcoin, they said, okay, we all agree that this is the ideal money. And I can see the appeal of starting off on that foot to say this is the ideal money because it has a lot of appeal. But let's talk to all the people that think this is ideal money, or even that think that this gold back is ideal money. How many of you are using this kind of money for your day-to-day purchases?
None. Well, unless they're doing it in some countries, but that's not what they're doing. And the weight factor as well, like depending on what you're buying, you're not going to be carrying around with that. That on the other side might has more work better.
Yeah. So some people say, well, it's because it's not divisible enough. Well, the gold back solves this. This is 1,000th of an ounce. It's worth maybe a couple of dollars. So this should solve that problem. But even though there are gold backs in Utah, people are not using gold backs for their regular purchases. Why not? Why are we not using this? Well, it's not efficient. It's still not very divisible, even though it's only $2. It does, it's difficult to use, and I have to carry a stack of these around my wallet, and I have to keep them. And if somebody knocks me over the head with a pipe, and these are in my back pocket, he can take them, and I can lose them. I can drop them somewhere. They're just not as efficient. What people are accustomed to these days is paying with their phone, or maybe if they're old like me, paying with their credit card. That's much more efficient. So let's go back to the way this started. The authors of blockchain said this is the ideal currency, but we want to make it digital so that we can do our purchases on a computer or on a phone. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to make a digital coin. We're going to make digital gold. And this terminology is all through Bitcoin. We have Bitcoin gold, we have Bitcoin Cash. We're trying to emulate gold. But now that it's digital, now that we're making a digital token, which essentially is a number, it's just a piece of information now, a piece of digital information instead of a tangible asset. How are we going to transmit that effectively? Like, how can I send this to you in Poland? Well, I really can't send it to you tangibly because it doesn't actually exist. It's just a piece of information all I can transmit to you is kind of an affirmation that you own it, because it's just this thing that exists out in the world. So we end up with something called the double spending problem, because I create this digital asset, and now we have to establish the question of who owns it. Now, let's go back to this. How do we establish ownership of equity money?
It's usually he who holds it, or
Okay, he who holds it. And what if I'm in a room of 5 people and I believe that I own this, and the other 4 people reject that notion?
depends on the room you're in.
Okay. And what if they're bigger than me?
Exactly.
Do I own this really? Okay. So with equity money, we need a civil society. We need a set of laws and practices and beliefs. We need the notion of private property ownership. That's a construct of civil society that says I own this. So everybody in the room has to agree that I own this. In the case of blockchain, we need a public ledger which is accessible to the entire world. And the entire world needs to acknowledge that this Satoshi that is on the blockchain is owned by this digital ID that I own and control. So we need public consensus in order to support the notion of equity money. Well, who has to agree in the case of private credit money? How many people do we need to concede in the case of an IOU?
Well, you'll need yourself to create it, and then the bank that validates.
So we need 3. We need the 3 in the case of this private money.
Yeah.
But in my chips, we're going to take that man out of the middle. So we really only need me and you. So we can have an entirely private blockchain now that only consists of me and you, and we can transmit money across that blockchain. And I only need the consensus of 2 people. So 2 things go away with the My Chips model. One is the double spending problem, because there's only one place to spend my token, if you want to call it a token. And the other one is the scalability issue. Is I don't need the consensus of the whole world. I only need the consensus of my trading partner. But what's the real problem with private credit if there's only one place I can spend my money?
Getting it?
Are you getting it? So if I send you money and I send you a check, there's only one place. Let's say I give you an IOU. Let's use the IOU example. I say, Roy, I owe you $100. Whenever you need anything, you let me know. If you need to go out to lunch, something like that, and I give you this IOU, you can only spend that with me. It's money. I created money. I gave you an IOU. It's a medium of exchange. It's a storage of value. We can even use it to denominate in dollars or ounces of gold or anything else that we want to do. So that IOU is real money, but you can only spend it with me. So whereas Bitcoin developed a conundrum with the double spending problem, My Chips or any private credit system develops a different problem, which is what we call the fungibility problem. Yes, I've got this thing, it's valuable, but I can only spend it in one place. And what I would like to do is when I receive this IOU from Roy, I'd like to spend it over here with Bob to buy something else that Roy doesn't have to offer me. So with My Chips, the challenge was, how do we use distributed ledger technology to be able to spend these private credit tokens in places other than the place that we got them from? Now, I won't go into a lot of detail unless you want to, but that's called the My Chips Lift algorithm. And it's a distributed algorithm. You could think of it as a smart contract if you're into Bitcoin terminology, but it's not one smart contract. It's a propagation of contracts that go through the network, very much like Ripple for those who are familiar with a Ripple transaction. And it bounces through the network and transmits value through the person that issued you the IOU, and it eventually lands with someone else in the network. And we can do those transactions in milliseconds now across a distributed network so that you can really propagate value to pretty much anyone in the world safely and effectively. But the money, the value is still built upon these private contracts that exist in these distributed ledgers that exist throughout the world.
So, like, you still have getting it into that. Like, I understand what you're saying, that we have something between us and everything, but any asset that I have, say, that I want to spend, and just like, say, Revolut, a lot of people think, there's a middleman in that as well. And I like the experience that happens, because there's the usual know your customer. I had sold property for one of the investments and transferred a couple of $100,000, and they basically blocked it, and I had to provide notary acts and everything. So people, at the end of the day, they're controlling everything. I still don't get.
How do you get the money in? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to answer really quickly with just a couple of words, and then I want to give you a better answer. The first answer is you don't have to. And now that sounds really weird. So let's go into the theoretical reason of why you don't have to. So have you ever heard the concept that banks can create money out of nothing?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your understanding of that? Why can banks create money out of nothing?
From my understanding, it's like when you're, say, creating a mortgage, or you're making a promise, and from that promise, then they create the money, and then they're charging you interest, and you do repayments, but you have created the money by making that state.
Exactly. So the bank did not create the money out of nothing, did they? They created the money out of you.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they can create money out of you, why can't you create money out of you?
Well, that's why I believe a system, but if I kind of go, all right, I've just decided 10 trillion is for you, and I keep doing that, then
Correct.
it has no value, because everybody's just playing around with it. So there has to be a system that it means something.
Correct. So the LiftAt algorithm deals with that. To help understand this better, let me introduce this little visual aid. Do you know what that is? Have you seen that before?
I've seen something about it. I didn't physically see it like you're holding up to, but in a book or something like that. It was an older system in, I don't know, Roman times or something.
Yeah, so this actually was used up until the 1800s in England and Europe, and it's called a tally stick, and it's actually a split tally stick, and I'm going to kind of split it apart here so that you can see that it comes apart into pieces. And this is an ancient form of money that was very stable, and it's proof that people can make their own money. And so what would happen is it's an IOU, it's a contract, it's a smart, not a smart contract, it's kind of an old ancient contract. But the size of these notches, they're called chits, CHIT, and if your thumb fit in them, that meant one thing, and if your little finger fit in them, that meant something else, and if they were too little for either, that meant something else.
And how does it work when you've got one person who's got a hand twice the size of the other? Is it relevant to the person that owns it?
I suppose so. I'm a little too modern to answer that question, but it's really a wonderful story if you read up about the split tally. And my chips is built on this concept. In fact, when we execute private credit contracts with other people, they're called tallies. So we're kind of modeled after this original form of money. But what would happen is if I was going to buy a wagon from you, and you were the wagon maker, you would make the wagon, and I would make the tally stick, and I would give you this longer piece. This is called the stock, and this is called the foil. And this was the money. And this was a claim against me for later. And later on, I might have to settle up with gold, or I might have to give you some reciprocal service. Or if other people knew who I was, and this was notable enough, you could transfer this around to other people, and eventually it could find its way back to me. And just a little interesting note, this is where the phrase, I got the short end of the stick, came from. So the debtor in the arrangement got the short end of the stick, and the creditor got the long end of the stick. So the way that you funded the value in the tally stick was not with other money, it was with the wagon. So when you provide goods and services into the economy, you can create money out of nothing in very much the same way that a bank creates money out of nothing, but you're not creating it out of nothing. You're creating it from the wagon. So my chips is backed by every commodity in the economy, and the money grows at exactly the same rate as the economy. So as the wagon comes into existence and is sold into the economy, a unit of money comes into existence in exactly the same proportion and size and exactly same timing as that commodity pops into the market. And so the money system is exactly balanced with the size of the economy. And so that's how you fund it. You get money into the system, not by going and getting, quote, real money. There is no real money. There's only money. And money at the end of the day, most money, if we're not counting commodities, if we're just talking about credit money comes into existence when someone trades some real thing. Like in the case of a bank making money, they're making it out of your house. Because when you borrow money to buy your house, they're using your house literally as the value base in order to back those new dollars that they are creating, quote, out of nothing. Well, it's not out of nothing. It's out of your house. Now, the time when money is made out of nothing is when the government gets to borrow and there is no house, and it can just borrow and borrow and borrow. It can borrow with no collateral. Well, that's printing money. But when you and I borrow, that's not printing money. That's backed currency. And when you privatize this, and instead of having a kind of a pool of mutual credit where different people can kind of leech off of the system by providing bad credit into the system, now it's sound money. Because it's actually at every individual node, it's backed by a contract between two people or two companies or two entities who know and trust each other, and they have collateral. So for example, I could make a gold-backed chip or gold-backed tally simply by accepting gold as collateral to back a tally. And so I can, in essence, create this silver certificate in a chip form by providing silver or gold as collateral to my trading partner. And I can manufacture chips on the fly in my chips that are backed by gold. Now, the nice thing is I can back them by a car. I can back them by a house. I can create small amounts of them backed just by my character and by the promise that I will go to work and I'll earn some fiat currency, or I'll earn something else, and I'll be able to make good. I'll be able to bake a loaf of bread. I'll be able to do a repair on your car. I'll be able to do any number of things. And so I can actually manufacture a certain amount of credit just out of my good reputation that I'll be willing to back that up at a later time. So that's the long answer about how you fund the chip. Is you fund it with future value. Now the way I fund a Bitcoin is with past value. I burn up a bunch of electricity and I end up with a token. Well, there's no energy in that. But in a chip, I make a promise of future energy. And so when you get a chip, you're actually, you have unexpended energy. You have something that actually does have intrinsic value, because you'll be able to expend that energy for your own benefit, not just in order to create the token.
And with, say, like pensions then, and because like people have a savings or social welfare, how do you see your system working with that?
So is your question, how can you do a pension?
Yeah.
Well,
I know.
so
if there's somebody in this society, if this is kind of, that doesn't work, or maybe perhaps is disabled and is unable to, but they'll still need to survive and have
So
food.
those are two different issues. So what my tip's goal is to create a stable monetary system. And your question about pensions is how do I create a social system on top of a monetary system? Your question about a disabled person is how do I show empathy and compassion in a society where some people are not able to produce for themselves? Those are two great questions, but they are orthogonal to the question of how do I build sound money? Now, in a compassionate social society, we take care of people who are disabled, and we take care of people who are elderly and are retired. So we build up taxation systems, we build up savings and investments, and we build up social security nets and those sorts of things. Those are the social constructs. And all of us have to work a certain amount in the day in order to just feed ourselves. But most of us can work enough in the day to earn extra so that we can take care of other people as well. Would you agree with that? But let's say we have 30% left over. Let's say we have the capacity to produce an extra 30% to take care of those who need to be taken care of. What if we have this man in the middle who's totally capable of holding down a producing job, but instead he's just out on his yacht enjoying life because he's doing nothing to add value to the system other than peeling off value from my transactions with you because he can't? That robs us of this extra value, this extra wealth that we have in the economy that we could be giving to people who are truly in need. And instead, we're giving it to wealthy bankers, wealthy government officials, wealthy people in the middle who are peeling off this. You said 5%, I think it's 50% is getting peeled off of what this productive labor is. In order to create an economy where we truly will be able to take care of those people who are in need, we need to make sure that every able person in the system is being productive. And you can do that by getting rid of mutual credit. This is a mutual credit system. Even this is a mutual credit system. As good as these distributed currency systems are, they're still based on mutual credit. Stable coins are still mutual credit. If we get to individual point-to-point credit, now there's ultimate accountability in the system. And eventually what I would predict is that everything you do in a my chips economy would cost half as much as it does today because all the freeloaders are, and by freeloaders, I don't mean disabled people, I mean fully capable.
No, I mean, yeah, the people able-bodied that like their welfare checks and they're doing something on the side in the black market.
Yep, we get the freeloaders out of the economy, and now we have excess. We live in prosperity, and we have the ability to take care of those who are in true need, and we can give authentic charity, and we have access to take care of people.
With what, like, I've seen the video on it. You have a video on YouTube, and it's nicely explained. What's been people's opinion? Is there anybody that's kind of said, okay, we need to kind of move this forward? Where is it?
So the questions you've asked are typical questions. How do I fund it is a big question. And so one of the barriers to entry is we need to get people to understand a few basic principles. One is that the value is here. I am the collateral. It's my ability to work. It's my ability to produce assets. I am the person who is valuable. So people need to understand that they are empowered to make their own money. And by make money, I don't mean earn money. I mean create money. I have the power to create money. So that's one barrier to entry, is an educational barrier to help people understand how this can be done. The next barrier is that if you only have two people on a chip network, it's not very useful. If you get a third person, it becomes a little bit more useful, but there is a sort of a critical mass problem. So adoption is difficult. And so it will take a little bit of time for people to establish first what I would call some contrived tiny networks. By contrivance, I mean we need to get a lunch group together, and we need to just start trading chips in our lunch group. And then this other lunch group over here is doing it, and then they can start transmitting. There are some ways businesses could get involved. A business could start paying its employees in part with a little bit with my chips. And so say it's a grocery store, for example. If the grocery store paid its employees 10% in chips, those employees could come back and buy the groceries. That's a bidirectional, bilateral trading relationship where chips work really well because they can be directly spent at the same place where they're issued. If we had a grocery store and a hardware store doing this, now the employees could not only buy groceries, but they could also buy hardware, because the chips can ripple through the network and can make it over to this other supplier. So with this critical mass problem, we would have to start out with some people who are devoted to make this happen, and are ready to work on the basis of this small network, believing that it will grow later. And so that's an adoption problem that needs to be taken on. And then obviously there's just the technical issues. Is the software is what I would call a proof of concept layer right now. It's not ready for prime time use, but it's ready for testing. It is strong enough that people can set up a server and they can execute tallies with their friends. They can begin to trade on this, but it's not production grade. Okay, we'll have problems. So you need to not use it for large sums today. You need to test it. And if you're a programmer, you need to get involved with our team, and you need to help and come do bug fixes and figure out the features that are not fully functioning yet, and harden the software. There's also some new advances in the works. I don't know if you're familiar with the libp2p network, but we're in the process of integrating libp2p back into my chips. libp2p is the basis of IPFS, which is a new kind of a new Web3 version of the World Wide Web. And so we're in the process now of integrating that into my chips, which will take it to the next layer. And we'll make it so that you don't really even need a server anymore. You'll probably just
No,
run
that's good, because that was my kind of question. I was going to ask about that, because I mean, if they're kind of downloading it or whatever, if that goes offline, so the way that you're creating it is that will never be needed, because I don't even trust the providers of domain names, because that could go off in the morning as well. So yeah, you're overcoming that hurdle. Okay.
So we need programmers. There are 3 of us right now working on this in earnest, and some of those are working on Torrent also. So our resources are spread very thin right now, but we are at proof of concept. We need more programmers. We need more entrepreneurs. We need more strategic thinkers. We need more people to form a larger core to come in and really contribute their time and resources to the project. And we welcome that. It's all open source. It's open platform. We have Discord channels that people can get on, and participate in the group. And so that's what we need. That's the barrier.
And with all your kind of, let's call it now, sweat equity and everything in the 3 people, how are you getting compensated for all what you're creating?
I'm not. This is a labor of love for me. I was very blessed with my experience at Action Target to be able to make some fiat money. Let's say I was able to take the efforts of my labors over 30 years and take some money out of that. And I've also started a number of other businesses that are for profit since retiring from Action Target. I have a successful lending business. So believe me, I know a lot about credit money. And so I am able to support myself financially in, maybe a day or 2 a week by these other businesses that I have running. And so in the rest of my time, I donate that to this project. And this is just totally free. It's open source. It's a gift to the world. And my only expectation is there will be some other people in the world who will also donate some of their time and resources and, frankly, money if they want to. I don't want them to give me their money, but they can spend their money in ways that I can direct them that will benefit the project.
The voting one, vote Torrent. That's I mean, I think even just say Ireland, they had elections not so long ago, and every single person were complaining about the existing parties. There wasn't much of a difference. They just kind of moved around, but the same people in power got in, and there was no way that was. I haven't heard of anyone that's actually happy with any of the political parties that got into power again. So and I mean, we saw it in the States, obviously, that's known internationally. Same in the UK when there was the Brexit. I'm not saying that the EU is actually a good thing. A lot of people think it is, but I could even see some corruption. There was people recording and just seeing people changing votes and everything. So it's badly needed. So you might just explain it to us what exactly it is.
Yeah, there are several problems in our current election system. One of them is that very often we're limited to 2 or 3 powerful parties, and in the U.S. it's always 2. In the EU, it's more of a fluctuating kind of a thing, but eventually you end up with just a few powerful players, and I don't want to say they're all corrupt, but I will say that invariably corruption enters in, because when you have such power, when you have such concentration of power, it's very hard to keep the corrupt forces out of that. So that's kind of one issue. How do we sort of break down this 2-party system, or you could call it a cartel of parties? How do we break that down so that anybody can run for office, and if they can manage to muster enough support, they can rise up and win an election? And I'll just say that runoff elections are the answer to that. Basically, if you don't have runoff elections, you understand the difference between a majority vote and a plurality vote. What that means is we run a single election, and whoever gets the most votes wins, even if that's 12%. If you have 10 candidates running, you can win with just a plurality, not a majority. And so when that happens, if you have 2 parties, and you have Roy over here who's dissatisfied with these 2 parties, and so he wants to run, let's say, to the right of this party or to the left of this party. He wants to run a more polarizing place than these 2 centrists. Well, let's say he's over here, so I use the right finger and don't offend a lot of people. If he's over here, all he's going to do is dilute the votes of this guy. He's going to take this guy out. He's going to end up with his most favorite of the 2 parties losing because he diluted his side of the political spectrum. Now, if you have a runoff election and this guy gets the fewest votes, now we have a runoff between these 2, and so Roy can actually win the election. But you have to run 2 elections in order to get that done. Now, there are a lot of people saying, well, let's have ranked choice voting so everybody can select Roy as their second choice. The problem with ranked choice voting is that maybe nobody even knows that Roy exists until the first round of balloting happens. And then people go, oh, Roy got a lot of votes. He made it through the first round. And my favorite guy over here went out. And so maybe I should take a look at Roy. And so when we have multiple rounds of voting where everybody can do the elections multiple times, a dark horse like Roy can rise up and actually wins an election that he wouldn't otherwise be able to win. Now, the problem is elections are very expensive. In human effort, it takes a lot of time. People have to go to the polls. Today, we're using mail-in voting in the U.S. largely. And so the government would have to print off a bunch of ballots, and it would take a month, and it's just very expensive and very slow and very cumbersome. Now, if we could have electronic voting, we could have a runoff this morning, we got an election this morning, and we could have a runoff this afternoon. And that would really be no problem. In fact, we could do multiple runoffs in a single day. We could have national election day. Everybody could take it off work, and we would just sit there and watch the balloting, and we would elect our leaders. And we could do that. But there's a very big problem with electronic voting, is who's going to trust electronic voting? We're trying to go back to paper ballots in the US right now because we don't trust the mail-in voting, and we don't trust the electronic voting, and we don't trust the electronic voting for good reason. It's very untrustworthy. There's this man in the middle, and the government or some private contractor or somebody is the man in the middle. Everybody submits their votes into this black box, and then some official stands up and says, well, we counted the votes, and guess what? I won again. I won again. Okay. And everybody says, well, how do we know that you actually won? Well, you can trust me. That's basically the answer that we're being given right now. So what Torrent does is really amazing. Is you take your phone and you download an app called Torrent, and a million other people do the same thing. And the only place the government is involved is they post a data construct out there that says, look, these are the people that have submitted to run. And these other anonymized identities are the people that are eligible to vote in this election. And now what happens is the balloting happens entirely independent of the government. The government does not collect a vote. It does not count a vote. It does not do anything of that nature. The people take their phones, and it forms an ad hoc peer-to-peer Web3 distributed network between all the phones. And there's a cryptographic algorithm. You could think of it as a blockchain, but it's not a blockchain. It's very distributed. It's a web of little individual relationships. And all of our votes get submitted into this distributed database that is shared between all of our phones. And all of these results are cryptographically locked, so nobody can see how the votes are progressing. We just know that they're there. We kind of know who voted, but we don't know how they voted. And then finally, a group of stakeholders in the election, these would be people who are running for office, candidates, officials, well-known people, you'd have maybe 8 or 10 of those people, all concur that the time is up. It's time for the election to be counted. They release a cryptographic key out into the cloud, and now all of the ballots can be opened up, but they're opened up across the network in an open way that everybody can audit and everybody can see at once. And we see the results, and everybody can add the results all at once and see who won the election. Now, this is really amazing because you have a little digital ID in your phone that tells you who you are, but nobody else knows that ID. So you can look into the vote totals, and you can pull up your vote, and you can see how you voted. And so you can make sure that your vote was accurately counted. You also can generate a fingerprint. For those that are programmers, it's called a hash or a checksum. And we can generate a fingerprint on the entire data set. And you could maybe look on the news, for example, and somebody could publish the fingerprint of the vote, and you could look on your phone and say, yep, they are looking at the same set of data. And we're talking about the whole results. They are looking at the whole same results that I'm looking at. And I know that everybody else out there can audit their vote, and I can audit my vote. We're all looking at the same set of votes. And so that's the basic premise behind Torrent. So it really solves 2 of 3 problems in voting. It solves the problem of runoff elections. So now we don't have to have a cartel parties anymore. It solves the integrity of the vote problem. Can we make sure that the votes are being voted accurately? The only thing that we're left with is who is eligible to vote. And it doesn't entirely solve that problem because we still have to have voter rolls. We still have to have a government who says who is eligible to vote. But it goes a long way toward transparency in helping us to see data. So we all have access to the voter rolls. And we're able to see if there are a bunch of anonymized voters, for example, it just doesn't make statistical sense, according to demographics or according to where people live, where population centers are. It will give us a large ability to audit those voter records, even though there's anonymized information, even though there's private information inside the voter records. It will go a long ways toward helping us to solve corrupt governments who are padding their voter rolls with fake voters.
With doing it on the phone. That's what I thought, even for referendums and everything, instead of leaving somebody that thinks they're have your best interest in heart, because I've seen this in so many different countries that every single side of a political party all vote for something. For example, the eviction bill in Ireland. I mean, they don't have a brain cell together if they all say, yes, we believe in this, because surely one of them has a heart and says, this can't be good for our country, but they do what they're told. With the phones, we see it with so many different things. Like, how do you do it in such a way that they go, all right, we know that so many percentage won't do it, or somebody robs the phone? Is it Face ID and you have to register to get yourself done? Because they can go and get X amount of phones. A billionaire can buy as many. They can create something. I know you said the statistics and know that this is out of whack, but they have, with the advanced AI and everything, they can go, okay, what's the fluctuation here? What's going on? How do we stop, say, when somebody passes away? Like, they always have an angle. So I know you've thought of that. So how do we prevent them from manipulating what would work?
Well, I'll explain to you the steps that have been taken. Now, I won't say that that there's any system that is entirely foolproof. So at the end of the day, the system has to be transparent and the people have to be involved. So if the system is transparent and the people will take time to look at the data and analyze the data and expose things that look fraudulent, then the people can rise up against corrupt governments and they can change those governments. And by rise up, I'm not advocating armed rebellion, but I'm just saying we have, in democracies, we have means at our disposal to make our voices heard. And there are so many more honest people than there are corrupt people, that if the honest people will just put a little bit of effort in, we can put good people into government if we will take the effort to do so. So that's the first answer, is that people have to get involved and they have to be involved. Well, if we have an app and we can actually audit the results, that's the first step to getting people involved, because I can audit. So that's the first step, is making it so it's possible for me to audit. Now, the next step is every phone has a vault inside it, and those vaults are very secure. They're secure enough to be used in the banking industry, and very high level of security. And when you register with the voting authority, there is a cryptographic token or key that is exchanged with the voting authority. So your phone, your device, actually gets registered with your voter record. So your phone must be the device to cast your record in order for that to be a valid vote. And if you lose your phone, you're going to have to go back through the registration process to register a different piece of hardware, and it's literally unique to that piece of hardware. So that's a little bit of a hassle, but guess what? We're getting a big security payoff in return for that. So in order to manufacture a fake vote, you have to manufacture a phone, and you have to have the cooperation of the agency. Now, I won't say that's impossible. I think that's very possible. But the next thing you're going to have to do is manufacture some voter data, like an address, like, where does this person live? And that may be transparent. And so if the neighbor to the person sees that there are 1,000 people who cast this identical vote, and they live across the street from me, well, there's nothing across the street from me. There's an empty lot across the street from me. So again, we have the ability to audit that. So can a person buy a vote? You brought that up. Well, yes, we're never going to get away from can a person buy a vote, but they'll have to literally go door to door to each person and say, give me your phone. Here's $20. Give me your phone. And they'll have to go in and vote for them. I don't think in a democracy there's any way we're going to get away from people selling their vote, because people are free, right? People are free. If they want to do something as stupid and corrupt as selling their own vote, it's going to be very hard to stop that. But we can stop this sort of mass corruption of selling votes, where we go door to door and say, "Here's $20. Give me your paper ballot," and then they go collect the ballots, the empty ballots, and they fill them all out, and then send them in with the votes they want. The person that you buy the vote from is going to have to put their biometrics onto the phone, and they're going to have to see, oh, you're voting for somebody that, I may not like, I may not agree with. So they really have to kind of know that they're selling their democratic voice. The other thing we're stopping is the idea that we can conduct the election. Certain people behind closed doors can count the ballots and then say, we're going to postpone. We're not going to announce the results because that just is not really landing where we want. Let's call all the precincts and ask them if they're really sure that we have all the ballots. And they get on the phone. Are you really sure we have all the ballots? Well, maybe there's a box here. Oh, look, I found another box of ballots. I'll have it up to you. And this is what we're seeing now is we found another box of ballots. We found another box of ballots. And this has gone on in California. It's gone on for weeks or months. It's just ridiculous. We don't know the vote totals yet. And
like the Epstein list, we don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, that smells an awful lot like corruption. If it's not corruption, it certainly has the optics of corruption. And so what Vote Torrent will do is, as the ballots are being submitted, they're uncountable because they're cryptographically locked. Nobody knows who's winning. And when they're finally opened, they're all opened at once and the voting is closed and you cannot submit any more ballots. So it cleans up that sort of loophole, if you will, that everybody's suspicious about, whether it's for good cause or not. Voter confidence is at an all-time low. And it's at an all-time low simply because we don't have transparency. We don't have auditability. And sometimes the results don't make sense to us. And so we suspect fraud.
With I've got in Estonia, I've had a lot of companies over the years in different countries, and I could see governments, with VAT, all that, like VAT rebates and everything. You could see they were always working against the people. So I kind of realized, okay, I like Estonia, no corporation tax, and you can double taxation agreement. But what it is you've got the card with a USB reader, and you do a digital signature. You have a PIN code when you're going in first, and then to sign it, you put another PIN code, and everything is there to be seen, and it can't be removed. And
yeah,
so it is possible. Like, I know, I see this and I go, this is brilliant. This is a way better system. It stops the guy that, is able to do the corruption in the back end, that I know exactly, hey, look, everything is there. It's stated when I done it, the accountant done their bit. So what you're saying is 100% doable. It's just get the mass. So have you got anybody, is there much kind of interest in this and people kind of getting involved and trying to move this forward? And do you start with a small little nation to make it work and go, hey, this works here, it's possible, and then people go, okay, let's do it?
I have some parties and some groups who are anxious to use Vote Torrent when it's ready. I'll say my chips is already a proof of concept and is usable as a prototype. Vote Torrent is earlier stage than that. The good news on Vote Torrent is it's a smaller project. I don't think it'll be as difficult to implement as my chips. But what we have working right now is the basic distributed database on Vote Torrent. And we're now just starting to put together the mobile app. The mobile app is very early stage. I can just show you a quick screenshot of it here. But we need programming help on Vote Torrent. So, there's the authority interface, for example, that we're starting out. So I can run an early stage prototype, but right now it's just buttons on a screen. It's not integrated with the database. Yep. So yes, I have a few interested parties who would like to use it when it's ready, but we really we need more programmers. We need a team. We need more people getting involved in VoteTorrent. We need to make this more of a community effort. And I'd love to get people involved in it. So.
And like the got choices, then I mean, you're showing about these. Like, is what other stuff is this that's with that?
So as I mentioned, Got Choices really covers three areas: education, energy, and money. I have active projects in money. I consider VoteTorrent really an education project, and we do have some projects that are in the energy arena. We're interested in pyrolysis in carbon fuel cells. And anybody, if we have any chemical engineers in the audience or people who are interested in some of these energy projects, reach out to me at Got Choices. I have projects. There is some limited funding available for these projects. If you are a technical person and want to do it, if you are a wealthy person who would like to fund energy projects, we can match you up with some technical people who you can hire, and they can work on open source energy projects. I'll just say, when I say energy project, energy is a very centralized uh, market. When you need gas or you need oil or you need electricity, you must go to this man in the middle. Well, at the same time, we're throwing away our garbage. We're throwing away our recyclables. We're throwing away a lot of things that actually we could be creating energy from. We own our homes. Putting a solar cell on your home is a great way for you to create energy locally. But we're injecting that back into the grid, and we still kind of have this man in the middle who's controlling our access to energy. The energy projects we're talking about are basically fully distributed ways to create energy and food and so forth, that you can create a sort of an informal co-op amongst your neighbors or like-minded people. And pyrolysis is the way that you can turn garbage into fuels. And so we're looking into sustainable projects where people can take their waste products and within a co-op can produce their own diesel fuel, their own carbon-based fuels. And we're looking into some technologies where you can effectively use those fuels and supplement. And you can imagine if everybody on the planet was recycling their own garbage and turning it into fuel and producing 10 or 20% of the fuels that they use, it would diversify, it would decentralize, it would spread this power structure back out to the people. We would be much more resilient against supply chain disruptions, against war, famine, pandemics, and other kinds of national emergencies or world emergencies that are either naturally occurring or man-made emergencies. So that's
recycling. That's I know that in a few countries, because I've got information from, people think, yeah, you're segregating all this stuff and it's going to be recycled and everything. And unfortunately, it's all a lie. They're being put in landfills. They're just burned. They're not using it properly. And,
well, the reason is because we're still doing the man in the middle. We say, I want to recycle. And so we ask government to implement a recycling program. Government goes out to the highest bidder, and some business somewhere gets the contract to do the recycling, and it's a black box. There's no visibility. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We really need to decentralize this and get it back to the co-op level where people are doing things on their own. And then I think and it needs to be economically feasible. It needs to help us and benefit us. And if people are, I don't know if you know about the egg shortage in the US. Well, some people say that's naturally occurring. My personal opinion is it's a man-made phenomenon.
Absolutely, yeah. They burnt down a load of the big chicken farms, and also the feed they were giving them. Because I was watching a lot of people, and they were saying, my chicken stopped laying eggs, and then they just left them eat the bugs like they used to, and it back to normal.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who has his own chickens, and he has a number of chickens, and guess what? Only 2 of his chickens died. to mysterious causes. So if it was the bird flu and he lost 2 out of his chickens and the rest lived, well, I'm not sure it made sense for us to kill 60 million chickens or however many chickens we just killed and created this egg shortage. Well, if co-ops were growing their own chickens or their own eggs and were supplementing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever percent of the market was being supplemented by these private co-ops, we wouldn't have these abilities to manipulate the market. Or we wouldn't, if they're naturally occurring emergencies, we wouldn't be so vulnerable to these emergencies, whether they're managed or not.
With people that have created energy systems, because there's a load of systems that were created and they were either bought to just squash them or they took the people out. There's even there's a guy in Zimbabwe now with a car that he's after creating. I had seen an energy system here and went and looked at it, that it was actually creating double the energy out that came in, but it was like he even got onto the local government album and everything was quashed and basically scared into never touching it again, which is a shame. But that's going on. Yeah. The problem is a lot of people are inventing stuff around the world and they're patented it. And it's basically just saying, hey, bad boys, look what I've got here. And you're putting
exactly.
Whereas when people kind of work to betterment the mankind, so there's a load of brilliant systems out there, but people are they're just using it for themselves because they know that this goes on. This is common knowledge now that, that if you have something that's going to take, money from the oil and the gas from the boys that are in control of it, they don't want to do that. So, by working together.
You have definitely put your finger on the problem. And I'll just say, if you have any listeners out there who are listening, who have a revolutionary energy concept, don't try to corner the market on it. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy nut, but you might end up dead. You might end up, you might end up threatened by government. We have a law in the United States that if you submit your invention for patent and the government thinks it's too destabilizing, they can sequester your invention. That's a law. They can sequester your invention if they think it's a threat to national security. And so I would just say, publish your invention open source, build a prototype, use it for your own benefit, and publish your invention open source. And you're safe and the rest of the world is helped. And build something on a little scale that co-ops can make your energy device. I don't know if free energy devices are real or not, but if they're real, everybody ought to have one in their co-op, and we ought to figure out how to do that. I'm an engineer, so I'm not sure there is really free energy devices, but I know there is energy in my garbage. I do know that. I can pyrolyze my old waste, my organic waste, and I can get biofuels out of that. So I know there is energy potential there. And so I definitely know that at a co-op level, we could do that.
And even on the solars, I've seen that the way that the solars are made, that it's like 15% of what they can do. So if it's manufactured in a way that we get the proper percentage, it's a lot better than thinking that cloudy day or whatever. So that's another thing.
Well, one of the problems we don't have with solar right now is we don't have a way to store energy. And so we have to store energy in the grid, and we get back to the man in the middle. Well, with pyrolysis, we can use fuels to decompose garbage, and we end up with biochar and diesel fuel as one of the byproducts. Well, guess what? That's stored energy. Biochar is as dense, it's more dense per kilogram than diesel. Pure carbon is very high energy dense, and so is this biodiesel. So we can store energy. We just need to think outside the box and not necessarily try to store it as electricity.
I love all the things that you're doing. I hope everything comes to fruition. I hope my listeners, they'll start reaching out and they see what they can bring to the table, because everybody's got a skill set that can actually make these things happen. I mean, everyone is there complaining and everything. I always said there's no point in complaining. Do something about it. So if you've got a skill set and you can do something, why not connect? So you might let people know, Kyle, where they can connect with you.
Okay, so the home base for everything we've been talking about is gotchoices.org. And if you want to get on there and you want to read about the general philosophical background behind this movement, you can read the tab that says the book on gotchoices.org. If you're interested specifically in the My Chips project, then you want to push the tab that says My Chips. And there's a separate book on there called the My Chips Papers that you can read if you're interested. If you're a programmer and you want to get involved, you can go directly to mychips.org. Or if you're not a programmer, but you're technical, you want to read about some of the technical issues behind MyChips, you can go right to mychips.org. And there is kind of a central clearinghouse for information and a bunch of links that you can hit there to kind of learn more about the digital currency. It's a little hard to find your way to votetorrent.org from gotchoices.org, although there is an article on ranked choice voting there that has a link that will lead you. But if you're interested in the voting project, I would just put in votetorrent.org and go there. If you want to get involved in our team, we have Discord channels for both VoteTorrent and MyChips. Those are not published, but they're open to anyone who asks. So reach out to us on the contact pages on either VoteTorrent or Got Choices and send us an email. And if it looks like you're a real person, not a spammer, we'll invite you to the Discord channel, and you can be part of the conversation and hopefully part of the effort.
Perfect. I'll make sure I'll put all the links both on the audio and the video. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Thank you.
So that's all for the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all the episodes on the cryptopodcast.org and also the Awakening Podcast, because I think this episode is relevant for the awakeningpodcast.org. You'll find all my shows and everything I'm doing, providing virtual assistance and the brain gym as well on roycom.com, or just scan the QR code. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, and connect with Kyle. Until next week, take care.